what's going on with the case of the war between Iran and the United States. But before going there, and we were talking about it before coming to this live about your case in Europe, which we know you have been under tremendous pressure from the European Union, sanctions, everything on you, on your life, influence your life. And could you update us what is going on with your case in Europe?
Well, concretely, I'm still debanked. Currently, I have no means for accessing any bank account. Fortunately, some people feed me or provide me with food because I have no way to buy anything through access to bank account. I have some cash, but that's all. And as to the sanctions, I still don't know up to when these sanctions will be in force. The paradox, not the paradox, but the specifics of these sanctions is that they have no limits. They are said to be temporary, but in reality, they have formally no limits. Unlike a court judgment, when you are you're when you are accused, not accused, but guilty, and you are sanctioned. You have a penalty depending on the mistake you have done. I mean, if you have stolen, I don't know, a small thing in a shop, or if you have killed someone, you will be punished accordingly. And the duration of your penalty will be according to what you have done. In my case, this is not so. First of all, I remind you that I haven't been subjected to any kind of trial. There is no legal decision. I haven't breached any law in the European Union. I mean, even in Europe, including in my country. In fact, in my country, this is even better because in the European Union, I was condemned because of my freedom of expression regarding the conflict in Ukraine. And for instance, European Union alleged that I made Russian propaganda because allegedly some interviews, I don't know which one, by the way, because it's not interview I have provided to RT or so, but these are interviews that have been picked from the internet and used by RT without my knowledge. In Switzerland, RT is not banned, for instance. Switzerland is a country where Sputnik or RT are not banned. I'm Swiss. So for me, basically, but this is not even that, because I haven't done any propaganda. This is just an allegation of the European Union. There is no single breach of any law in Europe. And I have been, there is no judicial or legal decision regarding my case. A judge has never debated on my case. I had no opportunity to defend myself. That is a sanction that came out of the blue. And it has no limits. That means that it's not that I've been sanctioned for 1 year or 6 months and so on and so forth. It's indefinite. It can be for the next 20 years. There is absolutely no limit to that. And I'm not, because we started the discussion when you asked me if I had been to Switzerland, because I live in Brussels, and you asked me if I had been to Switzerland for vacation also. And I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to go back in my own country. I'm not allowed to get out of Belgium. And if I would go out of Belgium, my case would then be a criminal case, because now I have no criminal, as I said, there is no criminal judgment or criminal court or whoever who decided. It's just a mere political decision. But if I tried to go back to my country, then I would start to be, that would be a criminal case against me. So even the Swiss government protested to European Union, saying that these sanctions are an infringement of my freedom of expression. And also the Swiss government protested because there were no due process, as I told you. But this has no effect on the European Union. I'm still sanctions with no justification whatsoever. I mean, they gave some justification, but the justification do not match the accusation, and they are not even a legal justification, if you want. And and the purpose of these sanctions, because that's the word of the European Union, the word of these sanctions is to make pressure on Vladimir Putin. I didn't know I had so much influence on Vladimir Putin, but
Yeah, it's just
there is a point where you're better off laughing because
yeah,
it's so ridiculous. It just shows how the political arbitrary decision is now guiding the European Union. It shows that European Union has no sense, and technically speaking, by the way, it's also something that many people and even lawyers, because now people have started to write books about me, about my case, because this is so extraordinary. And the thing is that technically speaking, the decisions such as the sanctions are not based on the rule of law. The rule of law means that the political decision is ruled by law. You cannot, if you have a law as a framework and you make your political decision within this framework. European Union is exactly the opposite. It's not the rule of law because the politics defines the law. It's not the law that defines the politics, it's the politics that defines the law. This is exactly the definition of dictatorship.
yeah.
And that's the
So,
reason why now people, if you look on the internet, they can see me with those black goggles and a rope around the neck. I took this picture from a movie of the early 70s done by Costa Gavras about the Prague process on the 1950s, during which it was exactly the same situation, but done by the Communist Party in Czechoslovakia at that time. And they made a movie of that with very famous French actor Yves Montand, who used to be a very famous actor. And the poster of this movie had exactly the same appearance as me now. And I have reproduced this poster. I will send you a copy. I will reproduce this poster with my head on it because I'm exactly in the same situation as it was during the Prague process. When in fact, you don't accuse people of crimes they have committed, you just invent a crime in order to punish people. And that's exactly where we are. We are exactly in the same situation. We are in a kind of Sovietization of the Europe now. This is exactly the symbol of I'm exactly the symbol of this Sovietization of the Europe at this stage. So that's the status of things.
yeah,
So we are working on the case with my lawyers, and again, as I said, since it's not a legal decision, there is no appeal in that sense. We have, in fact, to go to the European Court of Justice and convince the European Court of Justice that the European Commission has done something wrong. This is where we are, and we'll see how it moves, but it's very slow.
yeah, yeah. As you mentioned, it's purely political. It doesn't have anything to do with the law, with the
Zero. There is no judge, no court that has decided on my fate. Not
that's
a
why
single.
it's so difficult. It's so difficult to go against it because
Exactly.
yeah, unbelievable, Carol.
This
Unbelievable.
is
I
unbelievable.
hope
Truly.
everybody who's watching this and hearing this understand this is just for you. I remember when this madness all started, and continuing this way, it's how don't know how can the people all around the world. I know our audience. Whenever we're talking about your case, there's so much feeling for you for what's going on with your colonel in Europe, but
I
unfortunately,
know.
Europe is somehow
I
some sort
have
of island.
absolutely. I have a lot of support everywhere in all the country, in the whole world. Actually, really, I receive support, message to support from the whole world. And that is also, I mean, some parties, I don't want to mention which one. I'm totally apolitical. I belong to no party, and certainly not parties in Germany, Italy, or France, or whatever. But those parties have taken my name now as an argument to get out of the European Union, because they see the example, and a lot of people say, well, the case, Jacques Beau's case, can be us, anybody in Europe tomorrow. And that's
Exactly.
where what people is scared about, because when they start with just this case, that means everything is possible. We are on the road to dictatorship if we are not already in the dictatorship. I'll remind you that you had also this report from the Senate. I think it was the Senate of the U.S. About the European Union, the freedom of speech disappearing from the European Union, and also interference done by the European Union in some countries. So we have really a kind of dictatorship like behavior of the European Union. It's that's amazing.
Yeah. Hope something positive happens. Just hoping. I know
We'll,
that Europe,
we'll
there
do
is
we'll
no
do
hope
our
in
best
Europe
to get out
anymore.
of this mess, but
Yeah,
yeah, not just hope. We need a little bit more than hope, I guess.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Carl, let me ask you about how do you find the situation in the West Asia? We had the war between Iran and the United States later on, just 2 days ago. We had the Yemenis coming out and putting a blockade on Saudi Arabia, which was something new after 12 years of that siege on Yemen. And then the attacks coming. Saudi Arabia, I thought that they're going to back down. They didn't back down. They responded. They retaliated. They attacked Yemen. Then the Yemeni attack on Saudi Arabia, at least 3 points in Aramco was hit. Two refineries, one of the oil storages was hit, and there were some reports that they hit the Yambu
Yambu,
pipeline, which
Yambu.
wasn't confirmed later on. But at least with what's going on, Saudi Arabia doesn't have the upper hand, because on the part of Yemen, they don't have anything to lose because they were under siege for such a long time. Saudi Arabia has everything to lose
Yep.
with this war if they continue this war. On the other hand, we see Benjamin Netanyahu is getting back to the United States, talking about New York Post reported that he wants to provide Donald Trump with new intelligence data about the uh, mountain that they call it Kolang in Iran, but they Pickaxe Mountain, which is it's supposed to be Israeli intelligence says that the enriched uranium is under that mountain in a nuclear facility. Carl, looking at the situation, how do you find the war? If let's assume Benjamin Netanyahu is asking Donald Trump to continue the war, is that a viable choice for Donald Trump, considering what's going on?
Well, the short answer is that everybody knows that it's not viable. We know that the US is already now in a very tense situation regarding the supply of weapons, logistic, and not just that. There is also a problem of the mere operational logistic, if you want, not just the strategic aspect with the supply of weapons, but also the logistics at operational level. at the beginning in February, as the US started the war against Iran, they had a full network of bases where you could have a fuel supply of ammunition, whatever. You could also repair your aircraft, I mean, maintain your aircraft and all that. And you had all these bases across the Middle East, from Kuwait to Saudi Arabia, down to Jordan, with the famous Muwafaq salty base. Now, what the Iranians have done is basically to destroy all these facilities, and in fact, by using their missiles, they pushed the U.S. back to the Muwafaq base, and even there, they were hardly they were struck by those missiles, meaning that the U.S. has no much places where it can maintain its aviation, air force, and all that. Meaning that this process of debasification of the US has, it's not just a geographical dimension, it has also a logistical dimension, because now it makes the logistics of the US much more complex. You have to refuel your aircraft from much further away. You have to access your ammunition or resupply or fueling and say from much further away from the, let's say, the theater of operation, if you want. So that means that your aircraft can fly less time. They probably may carry less ammunition, and so on and so forth. So it has operational consequences. It's not just the geographical dimension of removing the US from the region. It has operational implications. That was also the objective of the Iranian. But this is the military context, if you want. Now, if we step back into the strategic dimension, we have now both the Yemenis and the Iranians, who are in essence an existential conflict. I mean, for them it's an existential issue, war, meaning that they have nothing to lose, because they know that both Israel and the US want to destroy them, in particular Iran. So when you are in such a situation where you have nothing to lose, then obviously you are ready to escalate. And as a matter of fact, the what I just explained before is the result of an ongoing escalation done by Iran, both an horizontal escalation, when you escalate the conflict by enlarging the circle of your operations in order to push the US away from your country. That's what they have done. And at the same time, you have a vertical escalation, in the sense that you increase the intensity of your strikes against the US. So you augment the pressure, and you augment the size of your strike, or the range of your strikes. So you have, and that's what, by the way, the Iranians call the unconditional escalation. It's a doctrinal principle of Iran. This unconditional escalation, and that's exactly what they are doing, and it works. But of course, there is a point where we are reaching now a point where the Americans have to react. And how can they react? They cannot really escalate the conflict, because, I mean, obviously they could come with a nuclear bomb or things like that, but I don't think they want to do that at this stage, at least. So we are not in that kind of situation so far. But of course, they can probably increase the number of strikes, the size of the bombs, and things like this. But as we know, and as I explained before, it becomes more and more difficult for them. It could be that Netanyahu asked for ground of the troops on the ground, or boots on the ground, and that's what is suggested through this. I mean, we have talked about this possible operation against Pickaxe Mountain. I have
Yeah.
difficulty to pronounce that, but and my view is that for Israel, it's not the matter of taking this mountain. The idea of Netanyahu is to put the foot on the door, if you want, and to have a ground force, and then the US would be stuck with that because even in the best case, what can you reach with that? You you cannot hold such a place for a very long time, especially in a country such as Iran. Um, so you can, assuming you can take, and I think that will be a very difficult task, by the way, to take this enriched uranium that is supposedly stored in the mountain. Um, the casualties you may have, or even the risk that those guys who you send there are not able to go back, meaning that the US would be obliged to send further troops and to have kind of a bridgehead inside of Iran to get those soldiers back. So that means that essentially the US would be engaged into kind of a ground war to some extent. And that's probably what Netanyahu wants to tell him. I, as you said, and that was something that was suggested, that Netanyahu would probably give some intelligence to Donald Trump. I would be extremely cautious if I were Donald Trump. I'm not. But I would be extremely cautious about Israeli intelligence. I mean, so far we have seen that Israeli intelligence was systematically false, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Intentionally, well, that could be explained by the fact that Israel wants desperately to expand this war, wants desperately to have the US permanently involved in a kind of permanent war against Iran, and all these countries. I mean, that has been a constant in the Israeli policy since the 50s. So that would be make sense to have some kind of disinformation, kind to lure the US into a very, let's say, juicy operation. And in fact, Netanyahu managed to do that in February, because all the previous US presidents didn't fall in the trap. Only Trump fell in that trap. All the others refused to engage Iran despite the request of Netanyahu. So it may fall once again in this trap, because he needs to have a success. He needs to demonstrate that what he has done so far bears some fruits, and therefore he may be attracted by the perspective of a success. The problem is that even if we assume the Israelis are not do not want to do or to lure intentionally the US, I would be extremely cautious about their intelligence. Uh, Israel is a country, and for most people, I mean, those who don't know the work of intelligence, those who have not been in the world of intelligence, those who haven't been confronted to the analysis side of of intelligence operations, uh, feel, and that's something you can read in many articles in the media, that Israel has the best intelligence in the world. This is wrong. This is totally wrong. Israel, or it's partially wrong, if I can bring some nuance here. Israel has excellent ability to detect people they claim who are terrorists. And if they want to find someone, they will certainly find this person. This is the kind of security intelligence or killing intelligence, they are able to do that. When it comes to assessing the threat, assessing their neighbors, assessing the abilities of their neighbors, and even in the rest of the world, by the way, uh, this is probably the worst intelligence in the world. And for a very simple reason. This is something that you cannot afford when you are an intelligence organization. You cannot afford to be ideologically motivated. You can have I mean, like the Israeli government, but not only the Israeli government. You have that in Europe. You have France is also ideologically motivated and all that. The government might be ideologically motivated, and you may have a policy ideologically motivated. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but that may happen. But what is not allowed to happen is to have an ideologically motivated intelligence. Intelligence has the task to assess the enemy. When you assess the enemy, you have to try to understand how the enemy thinks, no, not how you think the enemy is. You have to be able to put the shoes of the enemy, to understand exactly how, in that case, Iran, but that could be the Yemenis or the Palestinians. You have to be able to understand how they figure out war, how they figure out their future, how they understand fighting, how they understand victory, how they understand their ability, or how they perceive their ability to sustain losses. You know, sustaining losses is something, this is extremely cultural. If you go in, I mean, if you look, for instance, at the war we have now with Iran, you have, I don't know how many, and probably it's very much underestimated, but nevertheless, let's say you have about 50 fatalities in the US. In my view, it's probably much more, but I don't know. Let's assume it's 50. It's already a problem for the US. 50 people. Now compare with the number of fatalities you have had in Iran so far. It's already in the thousands. We have exactly the same thing with Hezbollah. We have seen the same thing with the Palestinians. They can sustain much more fatalities than the Israelis. And the Israelis, already with a couple of fatalities, they feel they have lost.